It would be helpful to unmute. Hello, everyone. Welcome to our final members meeting of the year. This is our winter 2022 members meeting. It's really beautiful to see a full house here. This is our first attempt at doing one of these in a hybrid format, so we're all guinea pigs and we're going to see how this goes. I will introduce Kenny in a bit, but as you can see, Kenny and a couple of others are joining us on Zoom. We're also live streaming on YouTube, and we're just doing all the things this time.
We're cool that way.
We are very cool that way. So I'm Taylor Roden. I'm the Director of Community Engagement at Historic Seattle. Our mission is saving meaningful places to foster lively communities. This is going to be so fun. Spot. Mike. Our mission at Historic Seattle is saving meaningful places to foster lively communities. Next slide, please. Perfect. So Historic Seattle, you got this. You got this. Historic Seattle knows that our properties and programs occupy the unceded traditional territories of the Coast Salish peoples. This land acknowledgement is not a substitute for developing relationships with Indigenous communities or for honoring Indigenous stories as we share our collective history, but it is our first step in recognizing the people whose land we occupy. Thank you. Next slide, please. Cool. So before we dive into the program, I have a few announcements, but we definitely want to thank our sponsors. They're pretty fabulous and they make our education programming possible. So thank you to Bricklayers and Allied Craft Workers, Local 1, Washington and Alaska, Daniels Real Estate, the Greystone and Gridiron, Selland Community Foundation, and Urban Villages and Railspur. Next slide, please. Cool. And I also want to really thank my Historic Seattle team. This was absolutely a collective effort, as you all will see, every single bit of it. And I also want to introduce some new team members. Our last members meeting was in June, and we have hired four-ish, we'll say four folks since the last time we gathered. So I definitely want to name them by name and force them to come up and give everybody a wave. Starting with Rachel Zabalza-Wynn, who's our Assistant Director of Philanthropy and Communication. Robin Harris joined before our last members meeting, but we didn't acknowledge that at that one. So I also want to acknowledge Robin Harris, who's our Facilities Maintenance Manager. He's not here today. It's pretty dang great. Our next person is Olivia Isarankura, who's our office administrator. I'm sure many of you have spoken with Olivia. Evan Bew, yes, Evan, who's our engagement coordinator. And also running tech today. And our final person was a very recent hire, Megan Stanek, who's our horticulture manager. And Megan's not here today, but she's also pretty dang fabulous. So, and you will see everyone else except for Jeff come up today. And I don't know where Jeff is, but hi Jeff. Shout out to Jeff, who's also on staff. Just a note to all of us, and I'm pretty sure that we're all gonna abide by the rules, but I have to say it. This is a safe space, and sexism, racism, homophobic comments, discriminations, insults, all of the bad things that we know are bad will not be tolerated in the space. Just a reminder to all of us to please be respectful for listening and learning and exploration. With that, we've got a pretty packed agenda today. As I mentioned earlier, our Vice Chair, Kenny Pittman, will kick off the meeting with the constituency part of our time together. And after that, we'll start our staff updates. It's all on your agenda that you have in your seats. Online folks, it was emailed to you. And I believe if you are just joining because you're fabulous, it's on our website, but it's also here. And then at the end of our time, after each staff presentation, for those of you who are new, please feel free to ask any questions that you have about the information that's being shared. There will be a question slide, but don't be shy. And at the end of our time, we'll end with Kai, who will lead us through an activity.
That should make you all very nervous.
Activity. That's what the Post-its are about. Folks who are joining us virtually, when we get to that portion, you can just put your ideas and thoughts in the chat and we will make it all work. We'll reconcile on the back end. All right, now I'm going to stop and we're going to pass it on over to Kenny. Thank you, Kenny, for joining us virtually.
Sorry I can't be there with you. I feel bad about missing the bar and the light refreshments parts. And but I can tell you next time I will be there. And one of the things that I really want to do, and I know I can't, is to say, could you move up a little closer so I could see you? But you know, I really want to say I'm the vice chair of the board, and I really want to say that I have a little bit of history with Historic Seattle. Prior to my retirement of about 3 years ago, I was with the city of Seattle for 17 years, and one of my tasks was the liaison between all of the public development authorities in the city of Seattle. So I have some history with Historic Seattle, and I really love that after I retired, Kai reached out to me, and still knowing the organization, I jumped at the chance. And so I just want to say, thank you to the Historic Seattle. I love the staff, and I want to say thank you for all of your hard work and support for Historic Seattle. And with that, I'd like to call the meeting to order. It is exactly 6:10 p.m. on Wednesday, the 9th, 2022. And the first thing I'd like to do is have the approval of the summer June 2022 minutes. And I hope everyone has had a chance to go through them. And do I have a motion to approve the minutes?
I motion that we approve the minutes as written. Second.
A motion has been made and second. Is there any discussion? Hearing no discussion, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say no. It appears, or any abstentions? It appears that the motion has been approved and is duly noted. And you know, the funny part about this is that for the official part of the business meeting, we're pretty much over. So I just need a motion to adjourn. You know, I've never had a meeting this short. And then what I would like to, once I get a motion to adjourn and approved, and I would like to talk about what's coming up next. So do I get a motion to adjourn?
I so move.
You know, that took a little while. You guys are having too much fun, boy. You don't want to leave. Okay, I got a motion to adjourn. Do I get a second?
Second.
Second. Motion has been moved and second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. Any abstentions? Okay, we have moved to adjourn the business meeting of it at around 6:15. The next step I want to do is, and you have met the great staff that we have there, but I'd like to have the staff members do a real estate update, finance and administrative update, advocacy updates, programs and philanthropy updates, and then an update on the 50th anniversary and activities. And so first one I'd like to call is David. Would you provide an update on real estate?
If you can.
I forgot to say two things. One, the minutes are in the packets on your chair. I know that was very small text. Two, I forgot to acknowledge one of our council members. Rico, I'm so sorry. Rico Park is in the back standing up. Thank you for being here. I'm done.
Hello, everyone. I'm David McLean. I'm the Director of Real Estate for Historic Seattle. A couple of updates that I'm excited to share with you. The first I'd like to start with is the garden house. Next slide, please. Here we go. Garden house. We approach this house as we do all of our projects with the aim of saving and reactivating a meaningful property for community use and enjoyment. And to that end, we have partnered with Reluta Architects to lead our community engagement process. And the goal of that was to really find out from the community around the garden house what it is they value, what kind of use do they want to see there. Next slide, please. And we hit a number of milestones in that process. You can see them here. The first step for us was presenting at the Beacon Hill Community Council meeting. Got a lot of valuable feedback from that. We had a table at the Beacon Hill Street Fair. Gathered lots of comments from attendees. Had a visioning day at the garden house, to which the community was invited to envision the uses of the house. Followed by a prospective tenant open house, where we invited people who were interested in leasing the space to come and take a tour and talk about what their business model might be. And last, we concluded with the community engagement survey that went out across Beacon Hill, and the report from our architect that summarized all of their findings. Next slide, please. So what we heard from the community was their desire for access for a wide variety of community interests and uses. Important for us always to apply a lens of diversity, equity, inclusion, and accessibility, and we heard that from the community too. They wanted it to be very accessible, diverse, and inclusive. So here's a list of some of the uses that came up quite a bit: arts and cultural activities, co-working, daycare and education, food prep and food service from the kitchen in the house, group meeting space, language classes and services, daycare, social services, and support. Some common themes emerged from the community feedback that we received. Space to build community was important. And some examples of that were small community-oriented businesses, food service or distribution, classes, workshops, arts and cultural activities, and so forth, and public events and gatherings. Next slide. So this graphic just kind of summarizes in broad terms the different categories that people felt were valuable uses of the house. Next slide. Which leads me to where we are today. So we have engaged with a prospective tenant. We're in the midst right now of lease negotiations with that tenant. Very excited about that and hoping to wrap things up within the next few weeks. Some things I can tell you about that model. They are envisioning using the space as a co-working space during the day. So an open office, kind of shared office, co-working environment there. And with a cafe, self-service cafe with packaged snacks. And then also operating the grounds, opening and closing the grounds at the beginning and end of the day to allow for public access, and managing all the rentals of the house. So they manage, if anyone had a private event that they wanted to hold there, or a community event or something like that, all that would be handled by this tenant. So responsible for opening and closing, I mentioned the grounds, renting the house, co-working office model during regular business hours, evenings and weekends reserved for events, and also some opportunities for that during the day as well, and providing access to a wide variety of community interests and uses. So we really felt that of the people who were interested, the applicants who were interested in renting the house, we felt that this tenant really embodied as broad an array of uses as possible. So we're really pleased and hoping to wrap that up and conclude that with them soon. Next slide. Okay. The other update is the Good Shepherd Center. This update is of a more pedestrian nature, but it's kind of exciting for me. I get excited about roofs and things. When we talk about maintaining the buildings that we have, I think you'll see in the next slide why this is so important. well, this will show you where it's at. So the main building of the Good Shepherd Center, we have a north annex here that's rented by the Meridian School, our longest, probably our longest term tenant there. So this is the area covered by the roof. Next slide. And so this is the problem that we had. Substantial ponding of water on the top of the roof really had deteriorated it quickly and led to some water infiltration. So this was one of two big projects that we had scheduled for this year. The other being an elevator upgrade also at the Good Shepherd Center. But we're really relieved to have this roof done. Next slide. And here are the results. Yeah. I'm not used to getting cat calls for roofs. That was great. Okay. So with that, that concludes my updates, and I'll open it up for any questions.
Just out of curiosity, the business model, you rent out the garden house, will they then, is there any profit sharing when they rent it out for events, or do they give us a specific rent and then they take whatever profit they make up?
It's that, yeah.
Okay.
So they're renting the entire house.
Okay.
We're negotiating that rent structure with them, but
Right.
the proceeds from renting for events would be retained by them.
Okay.
Any other questions? Well, thank you very much.
Next, we have Jane Davies to give an update on finance and administrative.
All right. Hi. I don't have roots or anything sexy like that. I do have a very short presentation for you guys. Partly because I've been giving a lot of presentations about our finances because it's budget season, but I'm looking at a lot of new faces, and I'm thinking that our next members meeting, it would be good to do sort of a review of our structure, organizational structure, and our budget so that you understand it, because I know a lot of you see us as Historic Seattle, period, and we're pretty complicated in how we're structured and how our money works, and so I think that might be interesting for some people. But today's short and sweet. Go ahead. This is the end of the year fund that the finance and administration team is doing. Right now, I'd say mid-October through the end of the year, we work on our 2023 budget. That involves getting budgets from all the departments and putting them into a big pot and stirring them around and seeing what comes out, and then working with staff and council to get to a place where we feel comfortable moving ahead in the next year. The other fun thing we really are just doing right now is we are migrating to the cloud, which some of you may understand and some of you may go, what are you talking about? We used to have a server, you can maybe hear it upstairs because it's about to die. And we have moved all of our files from the server into the cloud. That happened really honestly this week. So that's been a big emphasis. We're pretty excited about it because it allows for some more flexibility, and we also do not have to replace the dying machine. We are also working on work plans right now for the next year, and I'm really excited about that. We've all done that as departments somewhat, and this year we kind of have a little bit more of a cohesive structure, working through some diversity, equity, inclusion. A lot of work we've done this year and trying to incorporate that into how we think about everything. So I'm excited about that. This time of year, we usually do a benefits review in terms of our insurance, so I get to do that. And we usually update the employee handbook. I told you it's exciting. Next slide. So quick third quarter update up through September 30th. This is, let's see what I got here. Revenues as of September 30th. This shows the actuals, a little under 2.45 million. The budget was a little bit more than that. That difference looks pretty big in the bars, but it's pretty negligible. It's pretty close to where we want to be. I'm not worried about it. Some of it had to do with continued reactivation of our spaces after COVID. Some tenants are still catching up with that. And some of it is, that we do also have our philanthropic side of our revenue, and that can vary a lot in timing of when we get grants and when we get donations. So that's not alarming, especially if you look at expenses where we are way under budget. And so the difference, if you go to the next slide, of our net operating income is that we are way ahead of where we thought we'd be at this time. So that's great. And we only have 3 more months, so I feel really good about how we're gonna land at the end of the year. And I think that is all I have. Yes. Any questions?
That's actually very exciting. You downplayed it in the very beginning.
That's how you do it. So exciting. All right, and I'm always open to people asking questions outside of these meetings. If you're ever curious about what makes us work, I love to chat about it.
And next we have an advocacy update by Eugenia.
Thank you, Kenny. Hi, everyone. I'm Eugenia Wu, Director of Preservation Services. And I'm here today. My partner in advocacy is Jeff Murdoch back there. And so we tag team advocacy. So if you have any questions, definitely contact us. It was in March of 2020, early March, we had a members meeting here. And then you know what happened shortly after that. So some of you were here in this room. So the pandemic was very interesting. It kind of slowed some things down for a while, and then some things were put on hold and other things bubbled up. So advocacy is as busy as ever. And so I wanted to talk to you about just some of the things that we've been working on, some that you've been following, kind of give you an update. So here we go. Okay, next slide, please. Thank you. So some modern places that have been designated as landmarks recently that I'm very excited about because I love modern architecture. The old Steinhardt Terrell Anderson office building. This was an architect's office they built it and designed it as their own office on East Lake, sort of where East Lake and Fairview kind of split off. They're very iconic. It's one of my favorite buildings. And it was designated a landmark earlier this year, not with the support of the owner, so that's this whole other thing that has to be dealt with, but we won't go into that today. Anyway, it is not threatened. The owner has been a really good caretaker of the property, but he does own the property to the south, and so we don't know what will happen in the future. Freeway Park nearby also was designated. It's also listed on the National Register of Historic Places. And Parks and Rec, they have some plans for some improvements. They have really grand plans, but of course they don't have the money. So they're scaling down their plans. And value engineering is really helpful for preservation a lot of times. But anyway, so that got designated. So we're excited about that because any proposed changes to Freeway Park will need Landmarks Board approval. So we're really happy to see that. It is a modernist landmark that we love. Next slide. An object, we don't get objects very much, but the elephant car wash sign. There are 2. This is the smaller one. And the building's been demolished, but the 2 signs, the big one went to Mohi, was donated to the Museum of History Industry. The smaller one went to Amazon, and so it was Amazon that actually brought this to the Landmarks Board. So this got designated, and it will be moved, and I think it's at Western Neon right now in pieces. It's getting restored. And so it'll be reinstalled a couple blocks in the Denny Reed upgrade area. So it won't be far from the original location. I love these signs. They were so iconic, and they were such wayfinders. When I go there now, I don't know where I am. And so it's because these signs are gone. And so that's important. And then another modern resource, another favorite building of mine is the faculty club at UW. Unfortunately, it's a victim of the pandemic in terms of it closed. And so the UW club as an organization dissolved. And so It's owned by the university, and they are trying to figure out what to do with it. I think in the meantime, it's been used for like COVID testing and things like that. So we're waiting to see what's going to happen. It's really unfortunate. I would love to have the club reopen. It's a wonderful space inside, and the views are amazing. So we're kind of waiting to see what's going to happen. But it did get landmarked. The University of Washington voluntarily brought it to the Landmarks Board. And because of collaborative efforts that we were part of, the University of Washington properties on the campus are subject to the landmarks ordinance now. So this was one of them. Next slide. And then some bad news. In Belltown, the old IBEW hall was torn down a few months ago. I was actually here for a meeting in the old Labor Temple looking at this as this was happening. So that's where I took this photograph. I was in a meeting in a landmark building across the street, and just to rub it all in, you know, I just thought this is what I was witnessing, and I took a video too. So it was really unfortunate. It's owned by Church Home, and because it's owned by a religious entity, it could not get landmarked without their consent. There's an exemption for properties owned by religious entities from landmarking unless they support it. So that is no longer around. The Wayne Apartments also landmarked several years ago, but it was also torn down recently. The Landmarks Board ultimately did not place controls or protection on the building after years of the owner arguing that there was no reasonable economic use. And so, unfortunately, no controls were placed on it, so it was demolished earlier this year.
Where were the areas or?
Second, Jeff, help me here, second and, yeah, next to the old Mama's Mexican Kitchen building. So, next slide. So, we talk about landmark, a lot of times landmark, the big L designated, and then little L. And so I want to highlight a few of these properties. Speaking of sort of church-owned properties, religious entity-owned properties, the former Church of Christ Scientist in the University District is on 17th Northeast and Northeast 50th. And the same design architect as Town Hall, which was the fourth Church of Christ Scientist. The ownership, Church Home, same Church Home that tore down the IBEW hall. They own this, and they put it up for sale. There's a parking lot next to it that they sold. So a private property, a developer bought it earlier this year. So this was our window of opportunity to get a landmark nomination in because it was no longer owned by a religious entity. So Jeff Murdoch and Tom Heuser, they're the orange mask, historian, consultant, they pulled together a landmark nomination in about 3 weeks, 2 or 3 weeks. We got it in. Unfortunately, the developer then turned around and sold it to another church. And so it was, our nomination wasn't processed because it would not have gone through the whole landmarks designation process in time for this. I believe they're using it as a church as it was originally designed. As far as we know, there's no intention to tear it down anytime soon. So it is being used as it was originally intended. We've tried communicating with them. They have not communicated back. We've offered to be a resource for them to help them. And they said they declined to move forward with the nomination. So, but it is there. So whatever happens in the future, if it somehow falls into non-religious hands again, we can resubmit. So, but for now, it's still there. Is now owned by the Pursuit Northwest out of Snohomish. They've expanded into Seattle. Very close to home is the Hophius House, just right there on the same block. Wonderful building, owned by the Archdiocese, and we've been watching this one for a long time. The Archbishop, he does not live there, so it's been vacant for a while, for a few years, and so the Archdiocese earlier this year announced a partnership with West Bank, a big developer, to redevelop 4 properties here on Post Hill. And this is one of them. Although they realize how important this building is. And so some earlier renderings we've seen are this massive tower. There's more property here that kind of goes like this and then cantilevers over it. And we think it's kind of crazy. I don't know if it's even possible. But we are, unfortunately, this is, again, one we can't just landmark, even though the developer is going to be doing the project. If the Archdiocese still owns it, we're in that same sort of issue. And then I think this might be the last one, the Wilshire Building here on Capitol Hill. It is going before the Landmarks Board, I think on November 19th. And it's also threatened with demolition, but it has to go through the landmarks process. So the developer is putting this forth, but they're going to argue against landmarking, and so we will support landmarking. I think that is it, right? Yeah. Okay. So that was a quick run through of some of the stuff that's going on. If you have any questions, feel free to ask.
Chance you could get us into a tour of that bishop's house?
The Hope
Bishop's
House
yeah.
there. Well, so we last did it when Larry Kreisman was here. We toured it twice, I think. We don't have a connection there anymore. They don't barely even respond to us. So we could try, but I don't know if they will open it up to us. But yeah.
What kind of shape is the Wiltshire house?
The what? I'm sorry.
The Wiltshire house.
What about the
Yeah, what kind of shape is it in?
the house?
Yeah, for that, yeah.
It's in pretty good condition. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
It looks like, I just didn't know, because then it's you can hide
Yeah.
from
Yeah.
underneath.
None of these property are like, falling apart or anything, so, yeah. Okay, oh, yeah.
Why is there a religious exemption for land?
Lawsuit, state Supreme Court ruling, yeah. The First United Methodist Church, downtown on 5th and Marion, that kicked off a lawsuit in the 90s. And and so that it went through the process, the court process, and essentially it's a First Amendment issue, separation of church and state.
Yeah, I'd just like to make a comment about Freeway Park. I was a member of the Landmarks Preservation Board, the Seattle Landmarks Preservation Board, when the designer of Freeway Park gave a presentation to us about her design process and the early development of it, which was very exciting, and then it never became a city landmark for some reason. But I now live in Horizon House, which actually has a door into Freeway Park. And I go there very frequently and walk through it on the way to other places. And I've been to at least 3 concerts and 2 other events in the last 3 months since I've lived there. And I've been very impressed that the Seattle Landmarks or the Seattle Parks Department seems to be very enthusiastic about keeping, the whole essence of preservation is keeping places alive and flourishing, and I think there's good potential there. So I was very excited to see that that's now a city landmark.
Yeah, it is. We were excited about it too. So because now there'll be a public process to kind of see what changes are made, and so, but yeah, it's great. Thank you. Okay. If nothing else, then I'll turn over to Taylor.
Hello again. All right, let's go in. So we're gonna start with programs and events, and then we'll get into philanthropy and communication. So we're gonna do a year in review. This year we did 15 education programs, and it's kind of half and half. So this year we got the opportunity to come back in person and figure out what was working. Just like today's gathering, this was the year of experimentation in the world of programming at Historic Seattle. So we tried things out. This was also the year that we brought back series-based programming, and some of those series lended themselves to virtual, and some things that worked better as an in-person offering. Some of it we did both. And those of you who, I'm skipping ahead, that's just who I am. Those of you who are on our mailing list will receive a newsletter. I'll get to that in the next slide, but that summarizes essentially all of the programs that we had. Happy to provide details once all of this is over, but they were pretty awesome. We had a pretty packed year. One of the things that I just wanted to highlight from the year as far as programs as we come into our 50th is there were some things that we learned since we decided to just say, let's see what works post-pandemic. You all really liked our series-based programming, so that will continue next year. And program accessibility was something that we definitely paid attention to. So you'll notice, I think for those of you who have been with Historic Seattle for a while, the past couple of years, we were on Zoom, and we did a lot of experimenting with that to figure out how to make that experience both engaging and interesting for everybody, but also something that folks with a variety of abilities could experience. So you'll see that we have closed captioning in all of our virtual events, really trying to figure out how we can incorporate that into the in-person events. And then we also made some adjustments to how much our programming costs. We've got awesome program sponsors, you saw that slide at the beginning, who make all of our online programming free for everyone. All of that stuff lives in perpetuity on our YouTube channel, subscribe. Which is awesome. And then the things that we did in person were pretty low cost in comparison to what we've done historically, which was pretty awesome. We attempted to do some tours this summer of some awesome islands, and one of the key takeaways that I learned from that was that there was a lot of interest in the content, and I think that for the ways in which we've grown over the past couple of years, that ticket price was a little bit high, even though it was super great. And we did a lot of, I learned a lot about how much things cost now, transportation and food and all of that, and how much of that we could absorb as an organization. So looking into next year and all of the programming that we're going to do, it's created a really fun puzzle to figure out how we can still bring new and relevant information to you all, and also make sure that as many people as possible can access it. Next year, speaking of, so we are working on dates for all of these things. As always, we will announce it in our e-news. We will send our digital program guide. We send our newsletters out. We have our social media, so you will be getting updates as soon as we cross our eyes. Nope, that's not how that is. Cross our T's, dot our I's on dates for all of this stuff. But we'll come back to Heart Bomb in February. Really excited that it'll be my first time doing this in person. I started here in August of 2020. So my first Heart Bomb experience was on Zoom. And then we did something really different this year. It was basically a campaign. So it's really exciting that we'll get to be in person, make lovely Valentines for a place that really matters, take a cute picture, maybe have some cocoa. Please come to that. And then our Preservation Award Series is something that we started at the beginning of this year, where we, each year for our annual event, we honor a handful of preservation projects, give them awards, we sit, we have a fancy dinner, it's also a fundraiser. And so last year we decided, wouldn't it be cool to actually create programming based on those projects? So we did that this year, and it was really fun. Some of them were in person. I think 2 of them were on Zoom. So we'll do that again with this year's award winners. And then Eugenia and Jeff, thank you in advance for our landmark and research workshop series that we're going to do in the spring in partnership with the Black Heritage Society of Washington State. We've been doing a lot of work with them, specifically on our philanthropy side. And so this will be a continuation of that particular partnership. Next slide. And this is not really my role, so thank you, Rachel, so much for helping me with this particular slide. And I'm going to do a little plug. We are currently hiring for a director of philanthropy. So here's what happened in that part of our work this year. Our preservation celebration, which, like I said, is our annual fundraiser, had record-breaking numbers. So thank you so much. It was really fun. Again, this was my first time experiencing that event in person. I think in 2020 it was canceled, and then last year we did that on Zoom, and that was cool, but like not quite the same. So we got to go back to Washington Hall, get dressed up, have wine, have food, hug each other, all the fun things, and we raised $88,603, which is a record for us at that particular event. Yes. And we raised that much money because so many people gave. We also broke a record in terms of the number of individual gifts. And it was 90 plus, I can't remember the exact number. So thank you to all of you, and I hope that you can join us next year at our preservation celebration. The other updates here, it's a season of giving for Historic Seattle. You all, many of you, I should say, will receive our fall appeal in the mail that Rachel's worked very, very hard on soon. And then our last kind of happening for the year is our winter 2020 newsletter, which is also something that Rachel produces and works very hard on, and input from all the staff. It's a really great kind of highlight of the year, and we all of our departments here contribute to it. So it's a nice little snapshot for those of you who are new and want to learn a little bit more about the work that we've done. And that will land in your mailboxes mid-December-ish. Okay. Awesome. I know that was like super quick because I want to leave room for our awesome activity, but I'm happy to take questions.
Could you just back up 2 slides? When the cell phone went off, I just want to make sure I caught.
Sure. What
you were saying there. My mind's sort of going. Okay, got it. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. And then just a note that I will put this presentation on our website so that you all can download that in PDF form. And I'll also link to it in our follow-up email that you all will receive as well. So don't worry about missing any of the goods. You'll have access to them. Any other questions about money programs? Okay.
The best part of my job is listening in experiences like this, listening to staff. I've never said that before, but it's true. Really, the best part of my existence here at Historic Seattle for like 17 years, we don't do this all the time, but when we do, I sit and I listen. I actually do listen. And I'm proud of this group, right? I want to thank Mariko and Kenny. Special shout outs. I've been calling on you a lot recently for lots of activities, lots of things, and I just appreciate the time and the intelligence and the thoughtfulness that you bring all the time when you work with us, and I just appreciate it, so thank you. So, talking about sort of our 50, we turned 50. Midlife organizational crisis here. We're turning 50 at the end of next year. November, you're the gatekeeper on exactly when we were formed, November of 1973. Yes. So we're approaching our 50th. That coincides with our sort of expiration of our 5-year strategic plan. So I want to take this moment to sort of go back a little bit to figure out how the hell did we get here and where we're moving forward. So back in 2018, we wanted to be really sort of thoughtful, not sort of, but thoughtful in how we approach engagement with our constituents, our members, our donors, our staff, our council, to develop our strategic plan. We had never, I don't think, we had ever had a strategic plan. Cindy, do we ever have a strategic plan? Maybe, not really. So we wanted a strategic plan to use as a compass to help us move forward, right? And we wanted lots of input, lots of information and data gathering when we constructed our strategic plan. And thirdly, we didn't want to just put this thing in a binder, put it on the shelf and never refer to it. We wanted it to be sort of an active compass. So we went out, and one of the first things we did was we put out a survey. Many of you participated in that survey. Some of the survey findings, we asked a bunch of questions, probably 20, 25 questions. We desired feedback, right? So some of the survey findings from our membership, our constituents, build upon our reputation of an organization. Make what we do personal, continue to offer diverse and meaningful education programs, advocate on behalf of neighborhoods with City Hall, and effectively communicate that effort. articulate fundraising needs, engage younger demographic in communications should mirror concerns about rapid growth. You can read all this. Next slide. So we took those findings, that data, and as a staff, as a council, as a foundation board, we all came together, and in a facilitated way, we came up with 5 goals. Grow our financial capacity, strengthen the toolkit, focus on property, boost that portfolio that we have. Cultivate relationships, get out from beyond the desk, get out into the community, cultivate those relationships that really promote preservation, and then just build awareness of what we do. So it's great to have those goals. Again, the intent wasn't just to have the goals and stick them on the shelf, it was actually like, do something with that. Create some key performance indicators, some KPI that help measure effectiveness of our goals. So we have a lot of KPI. Those that are pretty relevant to these goals, as you see, dollars raised, number of landmarks. We wanted to be able to gauge our effectiveness as we move through years within the plan. So you see, you know, some things are easy, right? Fundraising is easy. Advocacy is difficult to gauge effectiveness of, but one way to do that is just sheer number of landmarks. We can control that in some cases we can't. I sort of look at it as a rising tide. As we're building a movement within Seattle, making, you know, awareness, making people care about a place, there's a higher degree of likelihood that the number of landmarks will go up. You can see sort of the trend lines, but it was important for us to be able to track, right? Be able to measure, be able to reflect as we look back and as we move forward. So where we are sort of now-ish into 2023, Taylor mentioned our heart bomb, sort of divided into equal categories here. Heart bomb in February. We have a really great advocacy effort underway with the Black Heritage Society of Washington State that really is going to focus on protection, landmarking of African American sites in the Central District. Preservation, real estate. David's done a great job activating, Taylor's done a great job thinking through activation and restoration of Garden House. No roof. We're gonna try to put a roof on Dearborn House before it leaks, or leaks more. And we're excited, you know, Cadillac, we saved this. It was the poster child of the Nisqually earthquake in 2001. When we put it back together, we could have a great partner, and it's already time to negotiate, I should say, that lease with the National Park Service. So those were 3 sort of main activities with real estate next year. Education, Taylor highlighted some of these great work that's coming up, our award series, landmark and research workshop. If you have not participated in that, I would encourage you to do so. We have the 2 experts in the country here in Jeff and Eugenia. They know what they're talking about. You should trust them with the information they're giving you. So I'd encourage you to attend. And we started years ago, this sort of young preservationist group. Didn't really take off at the time, didn't get enough traction. We want to sort of put that back together and call it sort of a placemakers where we have just diversify the demographic. And in general, as I alluded to earlier, sort of our 50th, celebrating that, talking about that, and also go through the strategic plan. So the strategic plan, this is sort of the engagement part of the evening. I encourage you to stop talking and listen and you to participate. We have some questions that are based on our mission, right? This is what we do. All of these words just don't arrive in this sentence randomly. They're all with intention, right? It's all about plurality of community. It's not a monolithic community that we're tailored to, that we work for. Many communities. We want to be able to foster, lively experience for community members as they engage with meaningful places. We recognize that what we do is a verb. It's about action. It's about doing stuff. This is intentional. So with that, now these may be generic, but let's use them as prompts, right? With advocacy, Many of you have been with us for decades. Some, I've never seen you before in my life, but there's some newer, some older folks to Historic Seattle. What's the most important preservation advocacy issue that we, in your opinion, face today in this city? I can open that up instead.
Are you asking them?
Yes, I'm asking you, like what bothers you, what concerns you, what is like top of mind when you think of how we advocate, how we should advocate, what needs are out there? You know, you, most of you, I'm sure, who lives in Seattle? Okay, good starting point. What bothers you about Seattle? Marshall, you're going to say something.
I live in the U district, so everywhere, I mean, the last 3 years that I've lived there, there's all these buildings that are getting torn down and redeveloped for new apartment buildings. And I don't necessarily see it as a bad thing, but I think the biggest thing, at least within the U district, is, you know, how much development is occurring and like what the people that live there and the community has to say about it. And I don't think that there's enough emphasis on community perspective to these developments. Like Sound Transit property at the U District station is being redeveloped. They have like this plot of land between the two station entrances on 45th and 43rd. It's gonna be an office building. And I'm wondering why are they building it as an office building when they could be making that, you know, affordable housing, and etc. All the buildings on Brooklyn that have been torn down to build new 25, 30-story buildings. I'd like to see, you know, more community-based approaches to how these buildings are being redeveloped and what that means for the U district and the businesses there and the students that make the district.
Yeah. Community input, right, or lack thereof, addressing needs.
I think density is a big issue in the central district, piggybacking off what you're saying. There's a lot of small houses that are great being torn down for larger apartment buildings, because I have a lot of colleagues and coworkers saying, you know, we need more apartments. We need more density for, you know, obviously there was a tax boom here in Seattle. A lot of people are moving here. How can we accommodate them, but without sacrificing historic properties?
I think we've tried for 50 years to show that social good can be met with preservation. With affordable housing, it's not an either or situation. We don't have to tear things down. There's a lot of naturally affordable apartments in this city that can be just left alone, and they're just naturally affordable. We have almost 50 examples or 50 units of affordable housing because of intention, right? Saving historic properties for that affordable
They
housing.
become unaffordable when they're replaced with people.
Yeah, I mean, how many times have we talked about this? Like the tear down of the single family resident, gentrification in the CD, yielding, you know, it's a naturally affordable house, you know, for that property owner, that's replaced with a duplex. Each unit's $1.2 million. That's all an affordability.
Are there historic places in the CD? I recently sold some CD. Are there historic locations in the CD that may not fall into the traditional, you know, grand house sort of version of
100%.
you know, studios from the 70s, that kind of thing?
100%.
Okay.
And that's what we're excited to work with the Black Heritage Society of Washington State
Excellent.
to explore.
I
And
think
to
that
authentically engage
so I think
that.
we're on the verge of losing everything in that area.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Yeah, time check? Good. How about on the real estate side? We do a lot, and it's sort of hard to get your head around. What types of property or use, Marshall, to your point, would you like to see Historic Seattle pursue, protect, invest in? Sort of an open-ended question.
I would say things that kind of go beyond like the beautiful like craftsman house or like 1910s brick buildings, because we don't just have old buildings, we just have modern, we have to consider everything.
It's the vernacular.
Yeah, I mean, that's practically exactly what I said. What happened to this space?
And that I think is what we are focused on, particularly with our advocacy efforts. This notion of honestly, it's not old dead white guy mansions anymore. It shouldn't be. The protection of that.
Excellent. Is there any way to preserve native spaces? I mean, I know it's a little bit heavy on the Duwamish, spaces that were important to your communities, and may not be, structured.
You know, it's a great question. It's going to be a huge area of our focus. I'm looking at a project now. We have not to get too down in the weeds, but we have an action fund that can be deployed outside of Seattle, but in King County. There's a site on Vashon that has unbelievable archaeology in Native American history, documented history. You go down into the basement and there is a shell midden right there as you walk down. The preservation of the structure, the relationship building that we could have with the tribal community, the interpretive opportunity there. It's our ability to sort of use real estate and education advocacy and bring it all together in a thoughtful way.
I'd love to see more mixed-use buildings with, retail on the bottom or anything like that, with apartments on top, be preserved and protected. Because I feel like those are very defining factors in the neighborhood, and especially being proponent of density. I think those should be a priority for Seattle to preserve.
Yep.
Come support next Wednesday's STEMR nomination.
Yeah. Education. What topics would you like us to focus in with, sort of explore with our education program? I'll hand it to Taylor, right? We are not afraid to try new things, and you as audience members are along for the journey. Like, you're up for us coming up with cool ideas and not so cool ideas. You're still like, hey, well, let's try it out. So
That's me, I'm not familiar with what you actually do.
So how would you describe our education programming now? Like, what is the state of play of our education programming currently? And where do you want it to go?
I want it onto the go part first. I think that's a little easier. I want it to be responsive to community needs. Honestly, I think that that would make me feel the most fulfilled in my work, and I feel like that's aligned with what we've been talking about internally as a staff and a council. So I would love for our programming to do, not even just the education programs, but all of the work that we're doing to really align with what is real for folks in the city and in various communities. So that's where I want to go. I think right now, what did you say about midlife crisis, or just like the period of awkwardness?
Maybe it's just me.
No, but that.
You can see that, can't you?
That's why I laughed. I think that right now we are blending what we have been in terms of education program offerings with what people are telling us that they need. That definitely was the case, I would say, last year, 2021, where most of what we did was virtual. Like, we started our series, our pilot series that year with History Collective, which was a partnership with History Link, and we were very specific about which of their walking tours we wanted to dive deeper into. That was really cool. But then we reached it back out to Larry Kreisman, who was the programs director here for 20 years, right? Yeah. And Larry did talks on stained glass, and he did a really great lecture on the Simpson Green Mansion. And I think that that's very much so where we are. And then this year we did successfully bring back programs that we had planned to do in 2020, and then the pandemic happened. One of those was a really cool jazz history event at Washington Hall. We tried to do some tours of islands. That kind of worked. So yeah, long story short, I feel like we are a mix of stuff that we know people want to hear, and then leaving a lot of space to just be responsive.
And what are the constituency audience?
So you say the question again?
Typical audience.
Oh, it depends on what the program is, to be super honest with you. I think that that's a cool part of the programs right now, that they are people who are really interested in architecture are coming to things like Larry's programs. Folks who are really interested in culture and are coming to things that are closer aligned with like our history collective program, where we're really diving into like use of space and communities who are using a building, not so much the architecture piece of the building itself. So I think that our audience is evolving, and it really just varies from program to program, kind of who we're going to see. And then we've got wonderful folks like yourselves, where I feel like there's a base of people who just really support the organization and support preservation overall, who are along for a ride when we say we're going to try something out, like our preservation award series. That was something that we hadn't done before, and I had no idea how that was going to go or who was even going to show up to that online and in person. And it was really cool to see who came to that. One of the places that we went to was Wanawari, which is a Black-owned gallery space. And there was a group of women who came from Tacoma to that program, who had never been to Wanawari and were really excited to learn more about the story and the work that they were doing to save the house and fundraise for the house. And so they had a nice little chat with those founders. So it truly depends on what we're doing and where we're at.
The through line for me is that preservation needs to be democratized. Right? Let's not overthink what we do. Let's not make this already more difficult than it already is. We tend to do that. The movement, democratize preservation, and secondly, connect with people where they are at an emotional level, right? For me, obviously, if you know me, you know what this means to me. It's personal stuff, right? I cry all the time. Just when I show up to work, just I randomly cry. The making it emotional, making that connection with people. You may not be a preservationist, but you are when the bar on the corner is torn down, or your old house where you grew up is torn down. There's a connection there. You lost something. So making it personal and sort of trying to democratize what we do. Thank you for the time check. So this is even a more active. That's why you have Post-its on your chair. I would love if folks would consider, what are the 5 words that you'd use to describe historic Seattle in its current state? We asked that question back in 2018, and we use this old fact, there's a word cloud that was generated from this. So as you have another drink, have more oranges, on each little sticky, think of a word that you would describe historic Seattle now, and I invite you to put it on our little. You can tell I made this. Put it on the big sticky over here, and we'll accumulate all this information. This isn't the first time I'll reach back out to membership and constituents and all that, but I think this is where we want to sort of refresh our strategic plan, sort of reflect back, get feedback on who we are, where we're going, what we want to be, and this type of activity I think will be really useful for us. Any questions? No questions?
Well, I have a question. It's about the Duwamish archaeology on Vashon.
Yeah, right.
Where can we get more information on that?
Well, the good question. The property is the Portage Store. You can go online, type in Portage Store for sale, and it's a property that's now listed for $850,000. It has about 3 acres that surround it. It's an interesting mix of environmental restoration with historic preservation, with salmon habitat rejuvenation. So we have discussions with the county to try to partner with them. They would lead, and then they would essentially give us the store, and we'd use our funds to fix the store, to rehab the store, and then we'd sell the store. All with a very thoughtful partnering lens with the tribal community to sort of handle all this in the most sensitive and thoughtful way that we can. There are a lot of issues. It's a weird site. Weird site, and the soil's really poor. It's on septic. Septic's failed. structure's okay, you know, it's a typical historic Seattle project. Like, you know, it's crazy, what are you getting involved?
What part of the island is that?
It's right between Maury Island and Vashon. So that's why it's called Portage, is that there was actually, back in the day, sort of this area that was more open and accessible, that Maury Island used to actually be an island. And they filled it in. Yeah. Yep. 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 I appreciate everyone being here, asking great questions, drinking our wine, drinking our beer. I just appreciate, you know, I started this with the recognition of staff and council, and I want to close by just thanking everyone here for caring and for being with us, for showing up and for asking questions and being engaged, because without your participation, we'd be awfully lonely. We wouldn't be here. So I just want to thank you. And don't forget the post-its on the big post-its.
So Taylor, thank you, Kenny.
Thank you. I want to say thank you to everyone who's there. It's really appreciated. And I promise that the next one, I will be there in person. You may say, well, we'd rather have you virtual, but I will be there.
Yay.
See you in June.
Looking forward.
Okay. Bye-bye, everyone.
Bye, Kenny.